Welcome to the SCL Finch here, joined by Anatoly, and we're going into PS4, specifically Europe, to start things off today on a beautiful Monday morning. Toly, hope you're ready for some big console action.
Yes, absolutely. This Monday, we have a blessing of a team for us so far. Goblin Gang, undefeated thus far, going against an winless team, I would say, VGS Gods. So a little bit of a mismatch.
That's right. They've had some struggles here, have VGS Gods. I believe it was the Goblin Gang roster was picked up by OutCold. That's what we're going to be seeing here today in this first set. And I think for good reason, right? Because they played so well in week one.
That's true.
So that's the kind of team that you want to pick up. And they're the only team, I think, that's 2-0 at this point. So right now, we're probably getting a bit of a look here at the top up against the bottom. Maybe to show you all a little bit of what we're talking about, let's get those standings here on the screen so y'all can see exactly where everyone's hanging out. OutCold 2-0 right now. And this is the chance for someone, be that VGS Gods, to try and upset that.
That's very true. And Goblin Gang, they did lose their first week, or at least one of the games against Bedtime's Calling. So we'll see if they can still, be relatively clean thus far without a single loss in the set-wise. Whereas VGS Gods has yet to win even a single game out of their two sets, sitting at -4.
That's right. They've had some struggles, to say the least. Now, this is... It makes some sense, right? OutCold Gaming is a team that's kind of been around. I mean, Cynortas, Kinder, mrsacx, we saw them playing some last year as well, I believe, in that fall split. So we're not too surprised. See, this is a team that still is able to put it together here in the first phase, rather. We're not doing split so much anymore of Season 6. And it's going to be up to VGS Gods to find some kind of place to slow them down. I don't know that OutCold, though, has an obvious weakness.
It doesn't seem that way. If you look at their first week 2 performances, I think
Right.
Kinder Warrior out of the jungle has been a fantastic aggressive jungler. mrsacx playing these aggressive supports, and he can mix it up too. Like, even though he's playing Bacchus, he's waiting for his opposition to make the first move and make the counter and then engage.
And the dual lane pressure is so important as well, Toly. We've seen it if you can get it on your own, or whether if it's the jungler that rotates over and helps you grab it. When you're able to repeatedly look for purple buff invades, red buff invades, if you're controlling those oracles, if you can be the team that can maybe even sneak a gold fury, something like that, that alone can be enough oftentimes to turn a game into your favor and push just with that extra pressure.
Teamwork makes the dream work, and if we're going to have rotations like that out of Cynortas, it's going to set up the gold fury, set up those purple and red buff invades. And speaking of which, we're not seeing too much action in the solo lane because of those buffs still being more valuable in Season 6. The total of coup is still important, don't get me wrong, but it's important to win the 1v1 matchup, not necessarily bring that second X factor to dominate that objective.
I agree with you. I don't think it's worth rotating over and having whole team fights over this objective right at this point. It's something that you kind of just let the one who's the stronger in the lane or has that pressure just try and control so far. I think that's all it was. To give solo laners a little bit something else to fight for. And that's why I think we're seeing more of those warrior types over there. Not to mention some of y'all's itemization's pretty good, totally, for those solo laners.
Yeah, the Blackthorn's Hammer is not too shabby of an item. Also, less Guardians with Guardians of Blessing. Way more action now.
Way more action over there on the solo lane, which, at least for me, is how I like it. So hopefully that's how everyone else likes it too. But VGS Gods, we talked about them a little bit. They've got a lot of work to do. They do have a TPC is a name that certainly is familiar to me, so we've seen him around some. Maybe that's enough for VGS Gods to try and help play around that middle lane, try and limit Cynortas, and like you said, some of his strong rotations that he can make. That's about the option that I'm looking for VGS Gods. But I'm also super excited to see if maybe they surprise me and pull something else out as we move into the picks and bans for game number 1.
It's all about the strategies of what they want to first pick or just take away. And looking at a VGS being the first pick selection, maybe they want to go for that mid matchup that you were talking about. Get TPC in a comfort pick and try to really lean on Cynortas. If he's going to be playing these immobile gods like Poseidon, you got to punish it early so it doesn't transition well in the late game.
Vamana has already been banned, as well as King Arthur, so 2 warriors taken off the table right away, but I think only one of them might be warriors in terms of solo lane. Vamana can sometimes be very strong out of the jungle, and that might have actually been the case as we see the Bacchus now banned as well. This is clearly an eye from VGS Gods towards Kinder Warrior for me, and trying to limit what he can do in the jungle.
That's definitely the target. If I was to limit anybody out of OutCold Gaming, you want to limit Kinder Warrior. Make sure he's not going to be comfortable. And on the flip side, when you're targeting out VGS, if you're second pick specifically, I don't care what team you are, you got to take away that Arthur. You put him in the solo lane, he's not going to necessarily lose any matchup levels 1 through 8. He will lose to RDO later on in the laning phase, but by the time he gets there, he'll have just accumulated such a goalie that it won't even matter.
Bots first picked by VGS. I'm a bit surprised that we're seeing this pick being that prioritized. And Bots is certainly strong. Fear No Evil is still one of the best abilities you can ask for in a team fight, just full stop. But I just don't know if it's worth prioritizing this high up. Maybe the idea is to leave some of those high quality picks there so you can come back around and get them on the second try.
I think there's a different meta between the console league and
Sure.
the minor and the pro league. Whenever you're dealing with consoles, you're dealing with bigger area of effect, ultimates, or just abilities in general. And what other ability than Fear No Evil would you want to have if you're going to be relying on that strategy?
Well, if you in first pick you take Bots, but you still get Bacchus, you don't feel too bad until you realize that you've given over Freya and Hera to OutCold. I mean, that is scary. It's a ton of magic damage, and Freya so many times can just feel like if they put it in the duo lane, just free pressure in that lane. It's so hard to box her early on.
If I'm on VGS, specifically ClawLegend, I gotta be camping this duo lane.
Yes.
I cannot allow the Freya to pop off. That's gonna be a nightmare to deal with after like level 14.
And it absolutely is. Don't let that Freya get online. It's something that you just can't afford to deal with later on as they add a Susano to give themselves even more of a scary mid-game than they already have. Once he gets a few levels underneath his belt, he can feel strong too. Though, I do like this from VGS. It is sort of a team fighting draft that they have, right? The Fear No Evil, this Bacchus, the Zeus. If they make it to the point where there's 5 of them all together, that's hard to beat.
The engages are certainly there. They need to have some sort of defensive peel as well. And if you're looking at the solo lane specifically, you're thinking maybe Guan Yu to have a little bit of healing potentially. Or you can have Amaterasu for the speed mobility aura to just allow the Zeus a little bit of an escape path.
It looks like they might have thought that that option was going to be Cerberus, because that's been banned away by OutCold. He certainly would open up the door for a ton more damage from this Bacchus and this Zeus, so maybe that's why they take that off the table, right?
Which is interesting, because you would think that OutCold Gaming can also go the Cerberus route, knowing that they have the Freya and they have the Hera, and more importantly, that they have the next pick. So if they wanted to, they could have leaned on that option, but instead going for more defensive.
And they also didn't have a Guardian to that point, so it certainly could have been a nice pick for them, but I think they wanted that defense that you were just alluding to, so they've got that Geb for themselves. That's going to keep this Freya and this Hera alive much easier with those shields, and it's plenty of control in these fights.
It's catch-22, because you want to have this Geb to be able to protect anyone that has the 3 stacks of the Zeus before he detonates, but you also don't want to be in range of the Batz ultimate. It's going to be very easy for this Batz to just drop that Fear No Evil on Geb and insert any other god here. If he gets a 2-man ultimate on that support in any god, that team fight should go VGS's way without having to worry about the shields.
Well, the Achilles is coming through, so it is very likely going to be the Freya then for just Lion over in the dual lane as they add a warrior to the squad. But it does look like OutCold had the right read as well, Toli. It was an aggressive Guardian that VGS ended up picking up in the Cabrakan.
Well, we'll see how that goes in the laning phase, because Cabrakan versus Achilles is as aggressive as it comes.
It absolutely is. Let's see who can find those kills, who can get out to an early lead. Are OutCold finally going to fall, and can VGS finally find a win? We'll find out here in Game 1.
Thank you very much, Finch and Toli. Aggro and Taco here with you for Game 1 of this beautiful Monday morning. OutCold, as Finch said, undefeated thus far. And I gotta say, I like their draft. If you get Hera and Freya on the same side, you probably did something right, Taco.
Tossing in the Geb as well from mrsacx, so there's plenty of frontline potential, I think, for this team. Just Lions got to be careful, though, of some of the early poke that this Bacchus Jing Wei can kind of synchronize together. I mean, Belch straight into the Persistent Gust, and they're not really winning this auto trade.
They sure aren't. Geb's not going to help out with that auto trade very much, or the early lane pressure for that matter. We haven't seen a lot of Freya recently, especially since the change, the first ability, but is she still that big push power in the dual lane or in mid early on?
It's those piercing autos every single time. Even though just Lion didn't get the best of that auto exchange early on, as soon as that level 1 wave came through, they're in a good position right now, I think, to look for that purple buff invade, but a nice persistent gust from the Jing Wei is going to assure that mrsacx and Just Lion are going to have to wait before looking at that purple.
This is what we've seen a lot of in the duo lane, where it's whoever gets the early pressure just goes and tries to invade purple, but I really like the fact that VGS Gods are focusing on the players instead of the gods, and mrsacx needs to be very, very careful. He still has sprint up, good patience for him to hold on to that relic, but he's getting close over there in that duo lane.
One thing I really like, though, is that Just Lion stayed focused on the creep wave, and I think that this is also showing slight steady improvements over the weeks, because week 1, week 2, I think that Just Lion would have probably prioritized looking to exchange poke with a Marky Sparky or iiExiLenT, but instead understanding I should kill these minions because the minions will do enough service of poking out the Jing Wei and Bacchus.
And I love the start of the Imperial Helm, just getting really close towards that Dynasty Plate Helm or Celestial Legion Helm, whichever he wants. The little bit of physical protection is going to serve him really, really well in the early game, not just against the auto attacks from Marky Sparky, but also the damage from the minions, which is physical as well.
Just little things to keep in mind, though, for Just Lion. We'll pretty much just have to keep an eye on him as the match develops. I think that in the early game, Freya and Geb, not super crazy kill potential, but the same could be said for Jing Bacchus. I'm just not really certain that we're going to see much pressure outside of Just Lion and mrsacx extending a little bit further up.
If we're not going to see pressure in the duo lane, then where will it come? Well, it might come by way of a gank as ClawLegend's on his way, but Shell's already been used. He's going to blink in, use that overhand smash, and that'll chase out Sprint and Purification Beads out of the duo lane of OutCold. So not a kill for VGS Gods, but certainly a victory that they get both relics there.
One nice thing for Just Lion is that by the time he hits level 5, those beads might already be back up again, so it'll be a little bit more difficult for ClawLegend to look for another gank opportunity. And he's also going to have the Freya ultimate at 5, as just in case the beads aren't up in time, you can always just get to safety that way.
Valkyrie's discretion, pretty good at getting you out of those sticky situations. But looking at OutCold Gaming's overall draft, this feels a little bit more mid to late game oriented. Geb, of course, not very good in the early game, but phenomenal when it gets into later team fights. FataliTyXFire's early game focus, but everywhere else feels like they're really focusing on the team fights in the later stages.
I think there's definitely a lot of interrupt potential from OutCold's draft, but you can't really shrug off what VGS Gods have gone for either. I think that Bacchus and Cabrakan can both be great setup factors in the fact that Cabrakan, he's got the Tectonic Blades. That's going to be a great method of cutting everybody's escape off for the Zeus ultimate, although there is a decent amount of mobility from OutCold as well as survivability just because you have a Geb. And Geb just kind of prevents all that lockdown potential, at least from a single target burst side of things. So it's going to be really big on ClawLegend, I think, to find the Fear No Evils that are going to keep OutCold's frontlining members from actually playing defense.
Got to be careful as well. No Purification Beads early on, but FataliTyXFire going very aggressively, has him in an execute range, and he gets that fatal strike. FataliTyXFire making it look easy, but here's ClawLegend on the left-hand side, back to the duo lane once again. Just Lion still not level 5. Some pretty good jukes, and Cynortas is here as well with a two-man knockup, but iiExiLenT will finally put down Just Lion just when it looked like he had gotten away. Very close. Some good moves from Just Lion.
Had it not been for iiExiLenT, also Just Lion would have actually probably gotten away there. It was a great Argus, found the knockup onto ClawLegend, and the Bot Sleep had already been expended, so it's not like he would have had another method of catching up outside of possibly a blink, but going a little bit unfortunate there, I think, for Cynortas, because he did use the ultimate. Now VGS Gods know that Cynortas isn't going to have this to help pressure around these mid-Harpies and Oracles.
Definitely feels pretty bad when you don't get a whole lot of value out of your Argus, but a good idea by Cynortas to use it to try and save his teammates. But don't forget, Hera gets that ultimate back faster than most. It's not a particularly low cooldown, but every time she hits her first or second ability, it'll take some time off that cooldown as TPC needs some help in the mid lane. Really nice shell by iiExiLenT. Good damage coming from TPC, and iiExiLenT's ultimate will take down mrsacx. The 2v3 turnaround in the mid lane for VGS Gods.
I think OutCold is overestimating their actual damage output this early on into the game. You're almost always going to see the favoritism towards Bacchus and Zeus when it comes to damage versus a Hera Susano early game. I want to see OutCold kind of take things a step back. It was good intentions, though, from Kinder Warrior. Got a pretty sick Typhoon off on the backside of oTPC. I don't even think that he knew the Susano was right behind him. So it was a great thought process. The execution just wasn't all there.
And the shell was huge as well from iiExiLenT, I think, to stop a lot of that burst damage. So VGS Gods taking advantage of some of their early pressure by way of their picks, but still down by about 500 gold. OutCold has had the majority of the Totem of Coups so far. Check out the nice little UI element on our top left side. You can see exactly that it's 2-to-1 in Totem of Coups. And it may not seem like a lot, but getting that extra gold every minute is a really big deal across the map.
It adds up, and the other big thing to consider as well is that Kinder Warrior doesn't really need to worry about his solo lane anywhere near as much as ClawLegend, because FataliTyxFire is the one finding the solo kills. If he can continue to pressure this Cabrakan underneath his T1 tower, just kind of continue to deprive him of farm and take that Totem of Coup fully under control, OutCold Gaming is definitely going to be profiting off of that side of map pressure.
mrsacx gets his rollout interrupted. Excellent there with that belch, but Cynortas' presence enough to make sure there's no real big commit onto the enemy support. It looks like tyrtoxic had this lane in his hands through the first 3 levels or so, but ever since it's been FataliTyxFire, now getting help from ClawLegend. Fatality's got to be careful. Double ultimate, but beautiful timing on that Fatal Strike. Gave him the CC immunity that he needed. Still in a bit of trouble, though, as tyrtoxic puts in some good damage even underneath the tower.
I love the patience there from FataliTyxFire.
Yeah, that was
just
great.
Sense that Fear No Evil was going to come eventually, and holding on to the Fatal Strike is going to make it so that OutCold is able to have a successful rotation, so that Totem of Coup locked down yet again thanks to the backup from OutCold.
Is that FataliTyxFire's patience being really impressive, or did ClawLegend miss a window to use Fear No Evil earlier?
I think that was definitely patience from the Achilles. I think that as soon as that sound cue went off, we saw FataliTyxFire beginning to react. So that was just, I think, the player himself having a little bit of his outplay potential with the CC immunity off Fatal Strike.
And those are the plays that'll get you further ahead in solo lane than anything else, because it stops you from falling so far behind, as now he's looking to go aggressive. Yet again, tyrtoxic 1 auto from death, but FataliTyxFire just a little bit short of that damage. But still, this is exactly what you want your big solo player to do. Get the solo kill early on for first blood, survive a gank by way of a really nice mechanical play, and then teleport back or even walk back to lane and just immediately start bullying again.
And this also, in a way, continues to negatively affect tyrtoxic, because when your jungler rotates and doesn't find that kill, your jungler is still leeching that wave. He's still leeching some of that farm and experience, and tyrtoxic was already starting to fall a little bit behind. So it begins to beg the question, is that going to be a gank that ClawLegend is going to be able to repeat? And the answer for me is not really. I don't think that that VGS Gods can really afford to have their jungler investing time towards solo.
Gold Fury pulled now by OutCold. Looks like TPC has got an idea that this is going on, and his presence will snuff that out. Lightning Storm forced by Kinder Warriors. Wind Siphon alone. Susano commits absolutely nothing and still gets the ultimate out, but FataliTyxFire ganked once again on that solo side. ClawLegend not worried about the Gold Fury potentially being pulled. And that's where having the Guardian really can assist you, because FataliTyxFire is going for magical defense first item and allows ClawLegend to get a lot of damage off.
See, that was where I was kind of expecting OutCold to continue committing to the Gold Fury, but I think that Zeus was just a little bit too much for them to want to deal with. And Zeus, and I understand it, it's definitely not fun going for that 50-50 toss. Hold that thought, though, because oTPC under fire right now from Susano, and Kinder Warriors burst more than enough to bring down the Zeus at last. That was
through a shell on top of that. We saw it earlier on. Kinder Warrior uses Typhoon, but Shell and Intoxicate and Lightning Storm combined to get Zeus out of danger. This time, now that the Susano has some more damage, not an option. Now looking for iiExiLenT as well. Polymorph just a little bit short. Wind Siphon's there. That's the jet stream on top of it. Kinder Warrior looking clean right now underneath that tier 1. Now it's back to the Gold Fury once more for OutCold. No Zeus, but Marky Sparky's here. But that's just a little Jing Wei taco. I don't know how much he can do.
It's Kinder Warrior. It's a Susano with Crusher. You already know that the Jing Wei is trying to run the opposite direction. Marky Sparky was looking for that backside steal away potential, but it's not going to be available this time around. Nice escape, though, off of just Lion's Banish. Thought there might have been an opportunity for OutCold to look for further collapse here, but they're more prioritized on just bringing down the Gold Fury and resetting.
That whole Gold Fury fight, it just has Kinder Warrior's name all over it. He pulls out the Lightning Storm from TPC by himself, literally with Wind Siphon. Then he kills TPC, even with iiExiLenT right next to him. And then he kills iiExiLenT basically by himself.
I'm almost wondering what iiExiLenT was still doing, though, hanging around that choke point for so long. I just felt like he gave so much time for Cynortas to get into position to help assist Kinder Warrior finding that Bacchus kill.
Either way, it ends up with OutCold now. Not a huge lead again. It's still a little bit short of 1,000 FataliTyxFire just off the mark, but here's the Blink Fear No Evil. Stuns him in the damage, and ClawLegend makes FataliTyxFire pay. He didn't just miss the Fatal Strike, but he also took a tower shot for his trouble, and it ultimately ends up spelling his second fall in that solo lane.
mrsacx, though, trying to provide a little bit of interrupt here. iiExiLenT falling incredibly low to this Pyromancer. It got poked out to about 30% HP. And that pool of the Pyromancer, I like the idea there from VGS Gods. They just found a huge pick, I think, onto FataliTyxFire. Now this is where I think Fatality needs to remember he's going a little bit more aggressively with his build in terms of buying the Glad Shield on the Achilles. So he's got the cooldowns. 20% cooldowns is pretty nice to have. Got a little bit of self-sustain as well now with that Glad Shield being finished off. But the protections from physical, not really there.
Typhoon cleans up TPC. Kinder Warrior looking good so far. He has 3 of OutCold's 4 kills and really making things happen anywhere he goes. But mostly in that mid lane, TPC finding that the Susano-Zeus matchup isn't one that Zeus particularly likes most of the time.
JustLion handling business over in the dual lane, but it's iiExiLenT who's under fire right now. Kinder Warrior trying to play zone duty. Bacchus going to be forced to flop over into VGS Gods' back Harpies, but the Pyromancer has been reset thanks to TierToxic's presence.
Fatality still playing very aggressively. Jump in by ClawLegend is pretty aggressive of his own. Your No Evil's ready, but mrsacx is there as well with his Geb shield just in case, and that's enough to send ClawLegend packing. Even though we've been talking so much about Kinder Warrior, ClawLegend's having himself a really solid game as well. He's actually ahead in XP over Kinder Warrior, 2-0-1, and a lot of it has come in the solo lane.
Pretty much all of it has come from the solo lane. ClawLegend, again, looking for a third wraparound, but this time, OutCold's got the wards necessary to keep him at bay. Plus mrsacx rotation, showing face from the Geb, is also another nice little way to force your enemies to get away from you.
Kinder Warrior dead before he hits the ground. iiExiLenT with a beautiful belly flop. He was doing really well up until that point, Taco.
You ever find yourself in the middle of a sentence and you see somebody dying, but it just happens so fast, you don't really get much time to react?
He's just dead so quickly. Not a whole lot you can do about that. Lightning Storm there for the Pyromancer, but Pyromancer goes still the way of VGS Gods. It's TPC with the secure, but ClawLegend secures mrsacx. Cynortas up for grabs. mrsacx gets that one. And FataliTyxFire now 1v5. Achilles finds one execute, has another one available. It's a double kill for FataliTyxFire, but mrsacx finally puts him down. Still getting 2 kills for OutCold. Could have been worse. So now JustLion forces out the airstrike. Valkyrie's discretion going to be a little bit short, and Mark gets out of danger.
Close one though. JustLion though not quite ready to give this up just yet. mrsacx has no idea this Freya is still lurking, but 3v1 could shift the odds here. VGS Gods looking to give chase to JustLion, but he'll be out before anybody even has a chance to catch up to this Freya.
That Pyromancer fight, it was an early Lightning Storm committed by TPC, but OutCold still felt confident enough to go in and try and contest.
I thought it was a rather odd engage from OutCold. It felt very one-by-one as opposed to this team fighting style, and I think that was just OutCold tunneling a little bit too heavily on the objective, and then some of their members were kind of focused on just looking for kills. I think that it definitely felt like some kind of breakdown in the comms there from OutCold, and they just seemed to hesitate a little bit too long, and VGS Gods just capitalized on it.
Also, they're taking a fight without the player who's done the most for them in these team fights, which is Kinder Warrior. He had just died on these left side mid Harpies, and that's why VGS Gods, rightly so, felt confident in pulling that Pyromancer, and without their jungler, it went pretty easily the way of VGS Gods. FataliTyxFire the only one to try and recoup some of those losses. JustLion again under siege, blink in, but delayed Fear No Evil. Beautiful patience by ClawLegend, and JustLion eats it.
JustLion getting punished for that early Valkyrie's discretion not too long ago when he was trying to find a secure pick onto mrsacx. So pretty big window of opportunity for ClawLegend to make a rotation. That is a big part of Freya's survivability, and now VGS Gods with JustLion dead, they're trying to pull this Gold Fury, and it looks like they might have just confirmed it.
TierToxic now in a lot of trouble. Cynortas right on top of him. Good Lightning Storm, but not good enough to save his life. It's another double execute for FataliTyxFire. Kinder Warrior's Typhoon is there just to try and zone away. As ClawLegend is doing what he can, but a great polymorph from Cynortas gets him off of FataliTyxFire. 2 for 0 around that Gold Fury.
Thought for a second that the shockwave from Geb might have been enough to steal it, but with the shift or the bump up in OutCold Gaming's overall gold, that was definitely a Gold Fury secured for OutCold. I think one big thing to take away from that too, if you're OutCold, is just Lion. When he uses the Valkyrie's discretion, he has to be much more mindful of his positioning on this Freya.
Yes.
I just don't think that a Freya can really afford to be pushed up halfway in the duo lane, especially when you're this late into a match. I mean, 16 plus minutes in climbing, you're already starting to break out of the laning phase around like the 12 to 13 minute mark. So it just feels like Just Lion might need to be a little bit more considerate of the map.
Plus, Just Lion's playing a character that is really set up around banishing their opponent and then hitting them on the way down. But that doesn't work against Jing Wei, where you can just agility away, and that's exactly what mrsacx done all game long. So playing aggressively, you don't even get rewarded for it because you don't really have your kill potential that you would normally have. Cynortas is in some trouble here because that Furious Monkey was beautifully used by ClawLegend, but a better Stone Shield used by mrsacx. Now, in this situation, I think is the time for Just Lion to be aggressive if he so chooses.
And Just Lion also, I think, was starting to do things a little bit more efficiently there. Waits until the agility has been used to get away from the Freya poke, and then he tries to cut it off with his banish.
Right.
A little bit too late on that last cast, so mrsacx, of course, was able to get away safely, but it's just something to keep in mind. ClawLegend, though, looking to get chased to Kinder Warrior, and it's Kinder Warrior who's sent back to the fountain a little bit preemptively here. Fear no evil, better than Typhoon.
ClawLegend, man. Hunbat's first pick looks a little bit weird. We see so many Hunbat's bans. It looks a little bit strange. It's another Fatal Strike misses for FataliTyxFire. But when you're going to play it this well, I mean, his patience in timing on these Fear No Evils has been really, really impressive. Outside of the first one we saw in the solo lane that FataliTyxFire was able to time out, ClawLegend's been mind gaming his opponents all game long.
I still think, though, it's kind of crazy to factor in that ClawLegend ganked the solo lane a ton early game.
Yep.
Profited off of it and has a 2-level lead now over his direct opposition. Hold that thought. Deep dive coming now onto Cynortas. Geb Shield already has been expended. Last auto to confirm it. Lightning Storm damage just a little bit too much. Not even Argus going to be able to keep Hera safe.
FataliTyxFire's here, though. No ultimate for him, but still plenty of damage onto mrsacx and TPC. But Cynortas fell for a tier 1 tower that was never going to be able to be defended. Cataclysm was a little bit late as well for mrsacx. All the while, Just Lion split pushing on this left-hand side. He'll get a tier 2 tower for himself, but VGS Gods are going to take this lead and go towards the Pyromancer. Looks like they got that one yet again. Another Hunbat's ultimate onto FataliTyxFire, and another kill set up by ClawLegend. 6-0-5 for the jungler.
I'm not sure that OutCold is really paying much mind to the fact that ClawLegend has 30% cooldown reduction. So those Fear No Evils, they're going to be happening frequently and they're going to be happening often. And I just think that if OutCold truly want to try and contest on these objectives, they've got to find better methods of baiting out these Fear No Evils.
Has not helped them very much yet. Feels like ClawLegend's getting a kill every time that Fear No Evil's up and ready to go, and he's nearing 40% CDR now with what is either going to be a Spirit Robe or a Mantle of Discord. Everyone's backed, and there's a lone Zeus, and I've been here, TPC. I understand your pain.
You can just hear, like, it's like your voice was already sighing.
I knew what was coming.
Probably what TPC did in that moment as well.
You got to be the first one to back. You got to let everyone else be there and dead because you left them. That's the way to do it. This is how being hurt works, Taco. Instead of thinking, oh, well, maybe I should have backed earlier and helped my team or something like that. No. You just back earlier enough. They don't ever worry about it.
Wait a second. Is OutCold Gaming really about to try committing to this Fire Giant right now? No, they're not. They just wanted to bait everybody else from VGS Gods away and into this pit. FataliTyxFire's Achilles proc going to end up pulling that Belch Silence. So nice little disengage, and so far so good for OutCold considering that they're the ones that lost TPC.
But OutCold's not doing a whole lot with this 4-on-5. Now a 3-man knockup coming from Cynortas, but not a whole lot of follow-up. Tier Toxic now in execute range. FataliTyxFire on the mark with that one. Double kill was there and available, but Cynortas steals it for himself. Big Fear No Evil coming on the backside, though. ClawLegend looking for a kill, but can't quite find it. Kinder Warrior, on the other hand, is able to take down mrsacx, and now right into the waiting claws goes ClawLegend. He finds his 7th in a row before FataliTyxFire finally puts the period on this deicide. OutCold goes 5 for 1, and this time the Fire Giant should be free and easy.
VGS Gods just got dismantled, and it's all because of that choke point too. The separation as well, the way that VGS Gods, it was just too problematic, I think, because mrsacx and TPC separated, and that causes iiExiLenT and TierToxic to not really be certain of whether they should be continuing to harass the front line to prevent OutCold from pushing in any deeper, but that's already taken place. FataliTyxFire has already made the wraparound through that choke point by those right mid Harpies, and because of that, he's just able to wreak havoc on the backline of VGS Gods with no one there to play defense.
It's felt like ClawLegend does a lot in that team fight, and just needs a little bit of help from another dive character in order to get 3 kills and live. But because TierToxic was the first one dead in that engagement, that's usually who's with him in those moments on the enemy backliners. Instead, he does it by himself, and Batz does a lot of things really well. Killing 3 people simultaneously isn't really one of them.
And this is going to cause some deep problems now for VGS Gods, because OutCold Gaming, for what it's worth, I think that VGS Gods had them on the run. This whole match has felt really, I don't want to say back and forth, it's definitely felt pretty one-sided towards VGS Gods because of ClawLegend. I think for the first 10 minutes or so, you could argue that it was a little bit more back and forth,
sure.
With Kinder Warrior showing a little bit of presence on the map pressure side of things. But now, with this Fire Giant, OutCold can begin to seriously develop a golden experience lead. There's still a couple of T2 towers left standing on the map. They've got ample time, I think, to start making their pushes. And the other problem, too, they get this Fire Giant when a lot of their carries are already approaching or at that level 20 mark, so the damage on these structures is going to be there.
Plenty of gold available for OutCold as well in these structures. They get 1,500 on the right, going to be another 1,500 here in mid. Add that into the gold fury that they got once they secured Fire Giant. They're looking pretty rich at this point. Look at how many Magi's cloaks are picked up. 3 in a row on OutCold's side. Kinder Warrior, Cynortas, and mrsacx all now with that inherent CC immunity. And that's going to really hurt ClawLegend's ability to initiate. But it's not only his, it's how do you pull off that Magi's Cloak easily? It's probably a persistent gust from some range that is your best option, but that puts mrsacx in a bad spot.
And we haven't even begun to talk about the fact that Argus, without a doubt, one of the best structure seizers out there, because of the fact that you just have to worry about killing Argus before you can do anything else against the carries from OutCold.
Kinder Warrior alone on the right. Flanked by 2, but that means mid's pretty exposed. Good Lightning Storm does some damage, but TPC's already out the door. FataliTyxFire makes sure of that. Here comes Fear No Evil from ClawLegend, but it's neutralized nicely as a Typhoon rips through and does quite a bit of damage. Now everyone from VGS Gods trying to kill this OutCold Gaming squad, which is so grouped up, but they just don't have the damage with their mage dead. The Cage from the Cabrakan does great work on Just Lion, but they still can't finish him.
But VGS Gods, they're still holding on to this Phoenix. Look at how low OutCold Gaming are in comparison to the Phoenix. mrsacx trying to make it back in time. He's got a little bit of crit damage coming through from the explosive bolts, but it's just not enough. No one is still to fall here from OutCold, but the Phoenix still stands.
Just Lion has to use Valkyrie's Discretion. Polymorph doesn't hit. Royal Assault does a little bit of damage, and it's absurd to me that no one on OutCold died, nor the middle Phoenix went down. How do both of those things happen? OutCold was grouped up. They were all standing on top of each other.
A different target focus. And I don't think that there was enough follow-up with TPC dead for that entire siege possibility there from OutCold. They were looking to push in a little bit deeper, but even without the Zeus, I think that VGS Gods still had enough creep clear. And that was another really big thing, is that I think that OutCold were trying to use that Argus a little bit more aggressively against the backline, as opposed to just having it tank up so they could focus the Phoenix. As a Freya ADC, it's a little bit more complicated when it comes to bringing down structures in a timely manner.
Definitely. If that's a Ullr, Gibalanke, or pick any physical hunter, that mid-Phoenix is without a doubt dead, but one of the few weaknesses of Freya is that she doesn't push structures nearly as well as a traditional hunter. And it's kind of accentuated by the build that Just Lion has gone for. You can pick up some flat pen, and that actually will increase your damage against these structures, but all the pen he has is built into that demonic grip, which doesn't really help him.
Yeah, I wouldn't really even argue it as being much a pen so much as it is just reducing the magical procs from VGS Gods as well. But something I really do like about this Freya build, I mean, he's got 3 rings.
That's not too bad. There's only one more he could get. Shaman's not particularly good on Freya by my estimation. I think if this game goes long enough, I'd like to see him sell the boots, get the Elixir of Speed, and pick up a Spear of Desolation maybe?
Obsidian even.
Obsidian could be good, but I think flat pen's really what you're looking for to help you against the structures at this point. You need to have that ability to kill a Phoenix in a situation just like that, where you kill the enemy mid-mage and you still can't get the structure.
It is important to note, though, that OutCold Gaming, I believe they got Fire Giant, the towers, but they didn't back after confirming those T2 towers. That was a lot of gold that all the members from OutCold were kind of just sitting on while attempting to bring down VGS Gods mid lane Phoenix. So having not backed and bought it then might also be part of the reason why they were unsuccessful on that Phoenix siege.
Taco, you ever, you're standing there waiting for a Gold Fury to spawn, you're kind of messing around with your team, you're VGSing or taunting or laughing, and then you accidentally beads. Have that happen?
All the time. I've also done it in lane while looking at the enemy mid laner.
That's a little bit worse.
That's a good time.
Cynortas feeling the pain of the first situation. His purification beads now on cooldown for 128 seconds for a whole lot of nothing. He does have his Magi's Cloak, though.
That's on the bright side. There's always positives.
And there's no way they could know.
No, there's absolutely no chance that ClawLegend is aware, but it will make things a little bit more stressful, I think, for mrsacx on this Geb, because with Cynortas not having any bees, that means that the Hera is undoubtedly going to be the Geb shield priority play, and if that's the case, that's going to give a little bit of wiggle room here, I think, for VGS Gods to maybe find a pick onto the Freya or even onto Kinder Warrior yet again. Kinder, I don't think he's really been as much of a standout in terms of the kill confirmation, but he's definitely still playing a lot of setup man.
Absolutely. Both junglers, I think, have played very well so far in this first game. ClawLegend has absolutely led his team in every measurable statistic so far. Player damage, kills, near the top at assists, and just by the eye test of impact, he's been second to none on VGS Gods. Kinder Warrior has done a lot of the same things for OutCold Gaming, but we'll see which jungler is able to make the bigger impact as the siege once again resumes on this left-hand side. Kinder Warrior split toward the right last time around. Didn't get a whole lot done over there, so we'll see if he does a little bit better this time as he's trying to push it in the mid lane.
But it's going to be ClawLegend who's sent as the response. Nice little wind siphon, going to get ClawLegend down to about 40% HP here, so he'll be forced to back. That means go time for OutCold Gaming, and they're already looking to collapse.
iiExiLenT gets absolutely nothing done before he's killed by that Fatal Strike, and TPC has to use the Argus. Get him, boy, but too far away as Kinder Warrior and the rest of OutCold finally secure a Phoenix. TPC had to use the Aegis as Argus was just pounding on the enemy mid.
But TPC didn't have anybody to play setup for his Lightning Storm. That's 2 Phoenixes, and all 5 members from VGS Gods still have their ultimates. Somebody's got to press 4 eventually.
Marky Sparky has to use the Aegis. There's the ultimate coming from TPC, but maybe it was better for him to hold it. Doesn't get a whole lot with it. Right side Phoenix coming down next. And OutCold still has a couple ultimates, Valkyrie's Discretion and Cataclysm ready to go. Question is, do they go for the end right away, as iiExiLenT has just respawned?
I think OutCold Gaming would rather wait until they have the certainty surrounding the victory, and I can't blame them. I think that when you've approached and hit the 30-minute mark, I mean, those are some really long death timers that can really start creeping up on you, and it's just not worth the risk. Even with all 3 Phoenixes down and 3 T2 towers still standing for OutCold, 1 or 2 team wipes could ultimately result in a turnaround situation here.
Just with ClawLegend's ultimate up, I think that's one of the big deters of the end call in that situation, because only TPC had used his ultimate, and yes, it was a 4v5, but the big ultimates were on cooldown, and Argus and Typhoon, those are the ones that are going to help you end the game the easiest. Cataclysm doesn't really do a whole lot for you in that spot, so I think that's why we see some hesitation out of OutCold. And Fire Giant should be coming up fairly shortly. Certainly in enough time that they could get Fire Giant and be ready to siege with these Phoenixes still on the respawn.
Well, the other problem, though, for VGS Gods is now they're kind of stuck in a dilemma where they can't really afford to just wait inside of the Fountain Room any longer for these team fights. They have to take an engagement outside of the Phoenix area now, I feel, and they have to make sure that they push up all of these fire minion waves at the same time. So while OutCold is focusing on the Fire Giant, ClawLegend and TierTox, they're already on the right page. They should be pushing up these minion waves, but they gotta be careful not to get caught out by OutCold. So that's something I really like to see, though, from OutCold. They're stopping VGS Gods from having the leisure of every single wave being pushed up, because that's the ideal defensive situation.
Absolutely. You can't do a whole lot about the left side being pushed out a little bit because it's so far from the Fire Giant, but mid and the right side, you can absolutely do enough to make sure that those waves are not pushed. mrsacx loses his bubble for the next 70 seconds because Fire Giant's hard at times.
It is. Well, Geb is pretty big.
He's a thick boy.
He's a thick boy. He's a tough time getting around those thin lines.
Spooky stuff in the jungle for him, without a doubt. But now OutCold, all their ultimates up. And here's the thing, in Season 6, a lot of times teams in VGS God's position, it's not so bad because they don't have to worry that much. It's not getting much worse. But now you got elixirs of speed and the like. It's getting worse for Just Lion. He's way too far forward. Needs Aegis and some help from Geb. And now it's Cynortas locked in alongside him. Look at how far FataliTyxFire is. But a huge Typhoon comes through the back. It's Kinder Warrior making things disruptive for VGS Gods. And now it's TierTox down. Just Lion gets him. A beautiful whoop should be enough to set up iiExiLenT, especially with his up-down. Kinder Warrior notches his 6th. And OutCold Gaming ready to get game 1 in their pocket.
There's just so many minions. Argus joining in on beating away at this Titan. Marky Sparky trying to go into the back lane here, but a nice Gip Shield's just going to keep everybody safe and sound while FataliTyxFire cleans up the Jing way. OutCold Gaming makes sure to take care of that Titan.
19-13, OutCold get game 1. It didn't look easy through the early game, especially. ClawLegend looked phenomenal, but it still wasn't enough to keep VGS Gods in it. I will say, though, that was the best fight that VGS Gods could have ever hoped for in that situation. FataliTyxFire's not in the fight at all. Just Lion's way too far forward, but they still couldn't get it done.
That seems so extremely one-sided, though, which is why it's so crazy to me that there was even that 180 to begin with for OutCold. But I think a lot of it just comes off of a really awkward Fire Giant contest from VGS.
Well, OutCold get game 1. Let's throw it over to the desk as we get ready for the next one.
It was a good start for Marky Spark and the Funky Bunch, but they couldn't get it done. In the end, that one does go in favor of OutCold Gaming, but that was despite a really strong performance from ClawLegend, especially throughout that early to mid-game total.
I think both junglers had a great performance.
Yes.
Obviously, ClawLegend was leaning on Fatality Warrior.
In the solo lane,
yeah, just being able to kind of plug him out, or FataliTyxFire rather, on the Achilles, because he had to go magical defense to go deal with the Cabrakan, so he had no physical defense to deal with the Batz. Whereas on the other side, Kinder Warrior had a good time just kind of exploiting the Zeus on TPC. He just did not have a good day at all whatsoever. And despite those early game successful ganks out of the Batz, once that Fire Giant happened, the rest was really history.
Yes, it was like a deicide around the Fire Giant, I believe, that led to really the game kind of blowing up in OutCold's favor. Because up until then, VGS Gods were looking really, really good. And to be fair to this team, they've had some struggles, not just in terms of finding wins, but even just keeping their roster stable, right? Like, iiExiLenT's been in and out with this squad. ClawLegend was a hunter back in week 1. They've been jumping around. They didn't even have X-Gamer in week 2. So not just having solid footing in terms of winning, but solid footing in terms of play. So I think that when you consider that, this is not a bad performance at all from them, especially against an OutCold team that's beaten everyone else.
That's true. They just need to find a way to transition their early game lead to more success in that late game. Make sure that their composition, I think, is what really kind of played a hindrance, because their front line was just too aggressive, right? They had the Bacchus, the Hunbats, the Cabrakan. We were talking about how they needed something to peel during picks and bans, and when they locked in the Cabrakan, I was a little worried for them that they wouldn't have that option. And then on the flip side, OutCold, instead, they went for the Geb, a much safer option.
Yeah, they definitely did not get enough from this Cabrakan. We were talking about this when we were watching the game as well, that ClawLegend was getting those ganks onto FataliTyxFire, and it was getting him ahead, but it wasn't creating any distance between Tier Toxic and FataliTyxFire in the solo lane matchup specifically. And because of that, it was really this Achilles with the resettable execute that was getting more value in those team fights than the Cabrakan.
That's right. I believe he got 2 double executes
before
before that Fire Giant deicide. And a lot of it came down to was the fact that Tier Toxic got soloed very early into the game. So all those ganks originally that was coming through, those ganks was just kind of making up for that solo kill in the first place.
That's right. Yeah, they had a little bit of work they had to make up for as they tried to find a way to get back into that game. Now, as they got to try and reset their mindsets into game 2, maybe it's like you said, maybe they need to focus more on making sure that they have a Guardian in this team that can do a little bit more peeling for their squad, because that deicide got out of control. When they lose too much all at once like that, including the Fire Giant on the back end, it's hard for anybody to come back from that. So, especially a team that can't keep their roster stable, maybe something to help keep their team alive a little better.
They could have went for a Terra in the solo lane if they really wanted to. With Geb already being locked in, they didn't have that option. What they could have done maybe was run Bacchus in the solo lane and then go for a Khepri in the Guardian position instead, knowing that they had to deal with a Freya anyway. There was no Guardian that would have helped win that matchup, so going for a defensive Khepri wouldn't be a bad idea.